is top of mind for all companies. First of all, at the outset, I want to say a big thank you and welcome on behalf of GSK to all the industry colleagues who are joining. We already have about 70 plus participants, and based on conversations with various friends in the industry, I know that we have participants from all the companies that are represented here. And it's great to see that we've got representation from both multinational companies with large operations in India, but in large Indian pharmaceutical companies as well. So welcome everybody on behalf of GSK. My name is Sundar Ramachandran, and I'm a team member within the Commercial Excellence function within GSK. I will be your host and moderator today. So thank you again for making the time for this interaction. Some basic ground rules and housekeeping. Given the large number of participants we have on the call today, we're going to heavily use the chat option, and you will see a chat symbol right at the bottom. Please use that to ask questions from speakers, but also share your comments. Each speaker is going to do a short keynote for about 10 minutes. And what I will assure you is if there are interesting questions that come up, I will surface these questions up. We're also recording this conversation, so we will make the recording available to you, so you can always refer back. Some of the operating principles. We have colleagues from multiple companies, so the forum is going to be super respectful of any proprietary information. What we really focused on is on broad thinking. What are the challenges facing the entire ecosystem, and what's the general direction of travel? There is no expectation from any colleague to get into any specific, so totally respectful of proprietary that is important for each of our operations depending on what portfolios, right? So why are we doing this? Why did a group of friends decide to come together and have this conversation? And I thought this image represents the clear story, right? It's the same storm, but we're all in different boats. So this is not unique to any one company. We're all trying to figure out how we're going to navigate what the next 6 months, 1 year, 2 years is going to look like. And as we are unlocking, it is almost feeling like getting off a tiger, right? And in scenarios like these, having conversations always help. There are no silver bullets, but definitely we can learn from each other. There is no proprietary on best practices and ideas. We look at the market today, we look at our industry, so much is common. The platforms we use, the tools we use, the way we go to market. I think the win is in the execution, not just so much in the ideation. And therefore, we can be a lot more open as an industry group to have these conversations. These are some of the themes that we're going to explore this evening. It's at the outset, I also want to say this isn't really an industry association sponsored webinar or some vendor-sponsored webinar. This is really a group of friends coming together and having an open conversation. So hopefully we'll all speak more freely, speak our mind, and speak from experience that all of us have gained on the ground working with various companies, right? So hopefully I'll encourage that, and this will make it a rich conversation. What outcomes can we look at, right? I mean, we're together for about 90 minutes ballpark, no silver bullets again, but what definitely I'm hoping would happen is if all of you could go away with 1 or 2 key questions that you can put in your consideration set as you go and speak to your management teams tomorrow. I think that'll be a great outcome. So what are 1 or 2 things that we must ask ourselves, ask the way we operate, and then that may perhaps trigger some action. I'm really excited for many friends who said yes to come on the forum. So thank you. As you can see, we've got a really nice mix of business leaders with capability specialism, marketing leaders, but we also have leaders from the partner ecosystem, who support clients like ourselves and really have the wider perspective on how each client is approaching the problem. So it'll be great to hear, and hopefully it'll give us a full comprehensive view of where we are, what our company is trying to do, what are interesting ways to look at the problem, solve the problem over the next 3 to 6 months. With that context, as the host company, GSK, we want to welcome all of you, and I want to invite a couple of my leaders to open the context, share their thinking, share their perspectives before we open it up to other external experts. So I'm going to request Anil Iyer, our Chief Commercial Officer. Anil, if you have an opening comment, it'll be fantastic. Let's hear from you. Anil.
Thanks, Sundar. At the outset, thank you, everybody, for joining us here at GSK virtually. I see a number of familiar names out on the list out there. So hi to all of you, those of you who know me. And thank you from the partner companies people who have come and expressed an interest to speak about the challenges or or the question that is before us, all of us today. And finally, thanks to Viva, which I think is a common platform across many of the companies that are represented here. So taking a step back, I think even prior to the pandemic that was taking place, the question that was before the commercial organizations, whether they be part of the commercial excellence teams, whether they be part of business operations as is defined in many places, or whether they be part of sales and marketing structures. I think the question before everybody was the clinic was getting extremely crowded. Of course, depending on the specialty that you are visiting. If you are in the primary care business, the clinics definitely were crowded. If you are at the other end in super specialty like oncology or say nephrology, etc., you would still get time, but you needed significant scientific evidence, scientific data, as well as very well trained field force to have those conversations. And in between, you had a large number of other specialties. So the challenge before all of us was always how do you take the engagement beyond just face to face, or let me even call it physical engagement. Physical engagement was through multiple channels, could be face to face, could be promotional, non-medical meetings being conducted, one to many, could be conferences, but fundamentally there were a large proportion of time and energy was spent around physical channels, and people had already started looking at how do we engage with our customers, take them through the journey that we all want to take them through as commercial people, as specifically marketing people, the journey that we want to take them through, and how do we expose them to content and what kind of engagement touch points that we have. With the pandemic coming in and physical conversations becoming a challenge, and meetings or gatherings of physicians becoming a no-no, I think what we were contemplating 5 months back has become a reality today. What's going to be the new normal is a conversation we can have for the next 2 hours, and everybody has a view on it. But my sense is there will be, as you look at the spectrum of customers that you engage with, the primary care physicians at the who could be general practitioner, consulting physicians, etc. The primary care physicians, in my mind, will still tilt towards face-to-face plus levels of digital. The other end of the spectrum is super specialty, which has already started moving away and looking at multiple other channels for engaging with the brands, is going to tilt towards non face to face, and you will see differences by company, differences by specialty, differences by brand. And I think that's a critical question that one needs to answer for your own brand and for your own specialty that you're going to deal with. And the answer will lie somewhere in between. The second challenge is, of course, what kind of channels to use. We in India have been extremely comfortable in using physical channels, and we use them very effectively. Share of voice in a physical sense is a mantra every pharmaceutical, commercial, or marketing or a salesperson understands. SOV is king in this country. But SOV through just physical channels may not be. So, what other channels are going to start playing a role in engaging? The customer is also going to become far more choosy now. They may want to consume information at a pace and at a time that is more convenient to them. So, how we as businesses and commercial folks respond to that? How do we make sure that the channel we use is appropriate for that HCP, and they consume content in a manner which they desire? So goes to, are we just going to go classical segmentation? We move towards digital segmentation? Do we start talking about micro segmentation, or do we reach the mana which everybody wants to, a segment of one and an ability to reach that one HCP in a manner that he or she desires? So that's the other question that will keep coming. How do you now segment your audience? Because it will no longer be around the journey in which they are in, but it will also be around what kind of content they consume, and how and when do they where and when do they consume this content? So that's the second question. I think I would be very interested in hearing views of the folks who are on this call. And once again, welcome to everybody. And my last thing is, I hope each one of you remain safe along with your family and take care of yourself. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anil, for opening the forum. Sumer, I don't know. There's one colleague who's joined on the phone call. I don't know if it's Sumer, but I think he's busy with some other commitment. We do have Sridhar on the call as well. Sridhar, as everybody on the forum would know, is our Vice President South Asia and Managing Director of India. Sridhar, thank you very much for joining. I would love to hear your opening comments as well. Sridhar.
So Sundar, I mean, I love to hear everybody else's comments. I mean, great to be here. Thank you for joining. Again, I think Anil set the context right, and I think we are all at a place and point where this couldn't be there's nothing more important at this moment for several to talk about this. There are only two things that I was reading a book, and it's apt for this situation right now. The biggest impediment to a company or any industry, or any industry's future success is its past success. So I think that's something that the situation is going to force us to come out of, right? And I think it's great to see everybody here talk about that. And there was another book that I was reading, and I'll stop with that, and I'll hand it back to you. There was a quote again on that book. The writer was talking about digital transformation. And what he says was, digital transformation, when done right, it's like a caterpillar turning into a butterfly. But when done wrong, all you have is a really fast caterpillar. So to me, I think Anil talked about various things that we are all looking at as a part of your overall transformation, as a part of overall transformation journey. And I think personally, we are all at a point where it would be wonderful to hear what everyone is thinking of. You showed a picture of tiger, and you I think you mentioned that it feels like getting off the tiger. I don't think the tiger is going to go away for the next couple of years, guys, right? I mean, from what it is now, the tiger is going to remain the next 18 months or 24 months, who knows when. And we all have to learn to ride the tiger, right? And that's what this is all about. And great to have all of you here. And, great to see some folks there whom I started my career with. And I'm going to hear one of them today with Pankaj, right? So look forward to that, Pankaj.
Thank you very much, Sridhar. Good to hear from you. And I'm going to ask Sridhar and I'll keep chipping in as we go along. Again, I want to say a big thank you to all the industry friends who've made the time for this discussion. We're going to kick off right away with Rachna. Dr. Rachna Acharya, thank you for making the time. Rachna, I'm going to hand over the presenter rights to you. And Rachna, would love to hear from you. Take it over.
Thanks, Sundar, for having us in forum, and thank you everyone for making your time for this important event. So, as we start, I think with the event topic, building the hybrid sales rep, I would like to really ask you to think about a picture you would like to paint when the word hybrid comes to your mind. To me, it's a lot of this, right? Digital, reshaping something, making something really electrical to the extent, or creating an amalgamation with blending all the right inputs to almost create something very new, very interesting. And maybe some of us may think even beyond it. And when we think of something like this as a hybrid, I think let's step back and think about it, that why are we even here to discuss this and why now? Obvious answer to all of us is COVID. I think what COVID has done is actually created moment of stillness, a pause, a pause in our lives, our personal life, our professional life, our businesses. It has really asked us and made us reflect upon what's useful, what's not, what's meaningful, what's meaningless? What are those connections which are so critical and important and what are not? And if we apply these principles back to our businesses, I think that's where probably we will be able to answer the challenges we are facing today. And if we apply this to the hybrid sales rep, I think to me, a hybrid sales rep is actually a reflection of hybrid business model. We know in our industry, our sales rep is the core. He is the revenue generator. Anything which influences a sales rep actually influences the business. So it's almost a direction as we talk about a hybrid sales rep to a hybrid business model. And let's see how does our sales rep, we all know this. Our sales rep is governed and influenced by multiple functions. These are just few which I have put in. And at the end of the day, he is the one who is interacting with our customer. As the lockdown happened, I think all of us here on the forum would have witnessed one thing. The top of the thing on our mind was how do we keep our sales team engaged? How do we make them more capable? How do we make them digital ready? So I think as leaders, it's important to think about a capability versus skill. To me, I think a sales rep is one of the most capable because they interact with our customers who are MDs, super specialists, day in and day out. They may not be the most skilled. And that's the best part. And that's the positive news because then the upskilling, the reskilling is easier and faster. They are adaptable to change. However, if our focus is just on the sales rep, maybe we are missing something because it's not just the sales rep who could be influenced. And even if we want to make that change, it requires a change across functions. So upskilling and reskilling is not just about the sales rep. It's the need of the hour for every function. And the every function is not just L&D and marketing, it's beyond it. We need to think as business leaders of building teams today which are multi-skilled, multi-function, so that we have very agile and flexible teams. And I'll give you an example in my business which we're doing. I have a marketer in my team who is actually in this COVID time has developed the capability of data integration, data analytics, which probably actually sits in a commercial excellence kind of function. It was never a part of his JD or a skill requirement. But to me, that's upskilling. It's also almost challenges us that is it time for us to look at the JDs which we defined for each of our roles, including us as business leaders. I'll give you another example. We have a platform called a Skin Diaries, which is a digital platform existing on YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, with almost 300,000 followers. This platform essentially gets run by marketing. This COVID time, I have sales team, few sales members who are actually developing the content of this platform. Now, this was never a requirement. This is never a skill which was ever thought about for a salesperson. And I think as leaders, if we can start thinking of this, it could be a big opportunity for us to develop our people and then to our business. And then it's not the salesperson who is leading from front. We all are in together to actually meet the customer demand. And it's not the digital platform. I think digital platforms today are available many, and it's almost become a commodity. What is more important is driving those platforms usage, driving integration across platforms. And that's what we should work with our IT, our digital partners. Medical and marketing, I think it's no longer about providing the right content and the right communication. It's also the deployment of it. Not that it was never important earlier, but it's more critical today. Let me share the example of Viva Engage, given that's one of the critical things which we all have started using in some form or the other. And I'm sure my co-speaker, Sudhi, will talk about it. But Viva Engage as a platform in India pre-COVID was typically used maximum by medical advisors, MSLs, or zonal managers to have a conversation or meeting with HCPs. Come COVID, and we all have switched and said Viva engaged that our reps would use it to interact, to do detailing with our HCPs. The for reps, it's a new change. For a doctor, it's a new change. What we did is medical, marketing, managers, L&D came together to handhold on this journey, and our 90% of our calls today, which happen on Viva Engage calls, are joint calls where a manager is also there. Can we even think about this in the traditional physical world we were, where 90% of the calls would be done along as a joint fieldwork call? 30% of our calls are the calls where a medical or a marketing person is a part of a customer interaction so that you create a very good customer experience. It's also an opportunity to get the right customer insight, given today you no longer go on field work and interact with a customer. Our L&D team, and I think it's an evolving situation for all of us. I think it's not about the number of trainings we do. It's the impact. And how do we start measuring that impact, the delta we brought in? For example, in this case, when we started with Viva Engage, and it's just been 2.5 months for us, our adoption of our team on Viva Engage was 30% towards May end. And as on date, as I talk, 100% of our team have started using Viva Engage. Now, that's the progress and that's the delta which a cross-functional team can bring in. Our HR will have to play a very critical partnering role with us so that not just to redefine our jobs and JDs, but also to think about some of the skills which were never thought about: cognitive, problem solving, complex issues, social skills. These were never something which were paid so much attention to. Today, it requires us to. It also requires us to be, as leaders, to be very empathetic, to think about our rep, not just as what we are asking him to do, but also think about his social condition. Where does he stay? How many people in his family are? We will think about asking him do a Viva Engage meeting. One of your most confident, well-versed reps, if he lives in a one-room kitchen with 6 people, low bandwidth, and does a Viva Engage meeting, a very high probability of his confidence not being there, of that meeting not being successful, and you not being able to create a right customer experience. So there could be many such examples, but the idea is that we need to get into the details and the depth and the nuance of everything. And we need to have a cross-functional team to work, and not just, it's no longer where only a medical and a marketing and probably a commercial a sales force effectiveness teams have to work. It needs to be a joint responsibility for all of us to take it forward. And why? Because we all know the world has changed, and it has changed for our customers. Our customers today are facing the same challenges. I hear some background noise.
Rachna, keep moving. That's okay. Keep moving, Rachna. Thank you.
It's our customers today are dealing with a lot of challenges. The technology, they are dealing with patients differently. Their professional and personal lives have been blurred. So we need to be cognizant of that equally. And hence, it's no longer a matrix of customer engagement. What's more critical is customer experience, which is driven by deep customer insights and critical customer needs. It's not just customer needs. And just give you an example of one of it. for all of us in business and as marketeers, one thing which comes to us is what should I communicate? What is our content, right? Think of yourself as consumers. What was the most critical need as soon as the lockdown happened? Grocery, atta, chawal, dal, right? That's what was running in our mind. Now get in the shoes of that customer today who has started his practice. What is the most critical need for him? When we started Viva Engage, I think like everyone would think about let's get going, let's start running, convert all the strategy which was lying and communication which was lying as physical, converted to digital. We didn't do that. We created content which was new, absolutely new for our brands, for the therapy. Still didn't work. We had just 2% customers on our platform. And that's when we realized what was going wrong. We went back, looked at, and got into the shoes of the customer to understand what was his need. And then when we relaunched and very new content which was aligned to what customers were looking at that point in time, it clicked. Today, our adoption, we have almost 10% of our calls are happening on Viva Engage. The number is not high, but I think it's progressive and it's a timeline of 2 months. What is more better thing or a matrix to look at is 35% of these customers have come on the platform for the second time in just 2 months of time. Now, which may or may not would have even happened in the physical world. Our every call which has happened, our average call duration for a Viva Engage is close to 22 minutes. That means that implies it's an effective conversation. So that's what we need to drive. And of course, I think Anil spoke about it. How do we classify and segment our customers? And if we can take it to the level of hyper personalization, a long way for us, but I think it's something which we all have to start doing. It's not just about the customer experience. It's critical is the customer experience management, which needs to be technology usage and its integration. I think Viva CRM is an excellent platform which helps us to give our dashboards and analytics. But how do you even use Viva CRM with other IT, your SAP, your iConnect data to map the HCP journey is one of the example I can say. Data analytics, our customer profiling, and we are talking about digital profiling of the customers today. It's critical. And it's not just for our HCPs, it's also important for our sales rep. How many of our sales rep are very good in doing a face-to-face? How many of them are good in digital? How many of them have actually an infrastructure to go digital? I think these are some of the attributes, but it's important to do that. Otherwise, we will be just pushing things, not really making real outcomes out of it. We also need to think about redefining our business KPIs. What is productivity? What are our specific KPIs? Is it 10 call average where effective communication time is 2 minutes? Or is it 3 digital calls where you had 22 minutes in average call duration? What is more productive? I think as business leaders, we will have to start looking at this data and answer some of these questions before we take the next step. Like I said, our customer engagement is no longer about the numbers we reach, it's the engagement. So when we send mails, it's not the number of mails you send. And I think the basic thing which we measure is the open rate. But personally, open rate is the most basic fundamental thing. The real engagement is click-through rate. So I think it's time for marketing to go back and think that how many of our mailers even have an opportunity where a customer can click through and you can measure that click-through rate. How many of us can think which of our customers are comfortable at our phone, which of them are comfortable on mail, which of them are comfortable on Viva Engage? I think that's where as we evolve in this journey, we will be able to make some steps forward. So it's time to pivot to meet new demands on these 6 pillars as I call, and some of it I have covered, but one which I want to really call out is innovate. Innovate, a word which has been used, abused. I would call innovate to execute. Let's just not innovate for the fad of innovation. it needs to be executable because there is a fatigue setting in, and the virtual fatigue sets in much faster, much earlier than the physical fatigue. Also, the real life is about variety. And today, our customers, we as consumers, don't have variety. So it's important we keep those aspects in mind in every touch point, every interaction, every content we think about, and adapt technology to drive efficiency and effectiveness, not just for the sake of it. Needless to say, as leaders, we need to think about sustainability and scalability of anything we pick it up. So it's just no longer about pre-COVID, with COVID world, the imbalance between physical and digital. I think it's time to think about our businesses, about rebalancing, about recalibrating our investments, reevaluating and redefining our goals, and actually reprioritizing what's useful, what's useless. COVID has taught us to get into nuances. COVID, if lives, we have to coexist with COVID, and physical and digital is going to coexist. The creativity has changed its dimension. Cooking was never a creative thing, and we see now plethora of pictures, including all of us, me and you, who would have put the pics of cooking, right? It's almost going back to basics. That's where human evolved. That's where healthcare evolved. From the trust, assurance, security. Does our brand communicate that? Do we as team communicate that to our customers is what we might want to think about. That's all from my end. Would be happy to hear any comments or any questions.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Rachna. There are a few questions, but in the interest of time, I'm asking everybody to keep the conversation going with you via LinkedIn. One of the objectives of this forum is also to sort of provide an opportunity to everybody to connect, right? But one question that has been asked by Aarti, Rachna, if you could answer that, what was the biggest pushback? You spoke about how you bring multiple functions together. What was the biggest pushback that you faced, as a business leader, and how did you solve for that?
I think the biggest pushback is when we are not looking at one goal, and we don't share very openly and transparently what is that we are looking at. So if I clearly spell out that my biggest challenge is how do I make my sales rep capable? How do I make my conversation with my customers better, and then ask them to help in this process? I think that's what happens. Otherwise, it's like it's my domain, it's your domain. I will do only this much, right? So I think you have to make them partners in your success and your failures.
Thank you very much. There are questions for you, Rachna, on chat, but in the interest of time, can I ask you, as you've now finished, to just respond to a couple of questions that you can via chat as well, and I'm sure people will connect with you offline. Now, that gives us a good tangent to move into our next session. I'm very happy to introduce Prasad. Prasad heads business operations for Sanofi. And it's been very educational for me to be having these conversations with Prasad and prep for this session. And what was interesting was he's got the commercial excellence function as we know it, but he also runs the Sri Lanka P&L for Sanofi. So he's got the blend of both, and it's very interesting how they are going about building the digital rep. Prasad, you now have the presenter rights. Over to you, Prasad.
Thank you, Sundar. Good evening, everyone. It's a very good, I would say, community of people coming together to discuss one of the hot topics. And thanks very much to Sundar for organizing it. Like he said, it's not an industry forum. And I took quite a few interesting points from Rachna as well. I mean, the whole thing around should we relook at JD? That's fundamentally going back to looking at, are we looking at the job profiles remaining the same. So there are some interesting ideas around it. So if I have to look at where we are today, right, it's a bit rhetoric. I mean, all of us know whether the HCP patient interaction or whether it's the HCP pharma interaction, all of it is getting digitized in an accelerated way? It's a very rhetoric question. Even if I go back to the commercial excellence or the go-to-market presentations I would have made a few years back, always there is this hybrid model, omni-channel rep. All of this will figure out in the 3 to 5 year horizon, but that 3 to 5 year always remains as a 3 to 5 year horizon. I'm sure you would have also faced very similar situations in your own commercial excellence and go-to-market reviews. But where we are today is it's no more good to have, right? I mean, we are staring at a reality where we have to jump into this hybrid rep, and we have been pushed into the well without knowing the basics of swimming. So the question is, what is the journey that we are taking? If I look at the whole hybrid rep journey, I see it as a very, very complex transformation for multiple reasons. Fundamentally, it's a big, big change in the mindset. Uh, we all know, the toothpaste companies have been hammering for years around brushing twice a day and all of it. And we are all part of that story, right? I mean, changing a fundamental behavior is the most toughest thing to do. And we know, especially in a market like India, where the reps are heavily relationship driven, it's a fully face to face model. There are many barriers, like Rachna spoke about one barrier, but there are many barriers around sales teams, barriers around customers' adoption of digital, but we are in a place where we have to jump this mindset overnight. And the second piece is the capability. For me, this is one of the most complex pieces for multiple reasons. If you look at capability, it is not just about sales teams. It's about marketing. It's about analytics. There's a lot more, aspects of this capability. But let me take a few nuances. We spend a lot of effort in training our reps for a very effective in-clinic call. We do a lot of certifications, a lot of role plays throughout the year. And the whole focus in capability building for the traditional pharma training team is all around in-clinic excellence. But now we are staring at a rep who is supposed to navigate between a quick telephone call, a remote call, whether it's a Viva Engage or an alternate platform, or even a face-to-face call required, and also juggle with rep emails, maybe some webinars and HO emails going to the doctor directly without rep being fully informed. So how is the rep going to navigate this whole piece, and how are we going to prepare the rep? And at a one level up, if you look at area managers, we are expecting area managers, first line managers, second line managers to coach their teams on hybrid models. And they have never done that in their rep phase of their life. And now the expectation is they should prepare their teams. Come to marketing team. If you look at pharma marketeers, 3, 4 years or maybe 10 years back, there used to be one paper detail aid, gets refreshed once or twice a year, a few LBLs throughout the year. Slowly we move to CLM, more content. But as compared to the consumer industry, pharma traditionally doesn't generate a lot of content. Now the question is, can we have content factory? Can we have integrated content planning, which Rachna also spoke about it? It's not easy. The CLM calls are not very well integrated with the ex-clinic activities. The rep triggered emails may not necessarily be integrated with the activities nor the the CLM calls. How do you make sure the customer experience of journey is integrated? There are questions which are glaring at every function, every stakeholder of our internal ecosystem, whether it's sales rep, whether it's a manager, whether it's a marketeer. And then this whole gamut of platforms and data analytics. For me, personally, I have spent quite a lot of time in the last 1 year on this piece, because this is fundamental bedrock for making the whole ecosystem work. You are overnight, you are ramping up multiple platforms. It could be, HO email platforms, webinar platforms, you have CLM, remote detailing platforms. There are teams working on podcasts. There are third-party engagements that are happening, e-certifications. There are so many platforms that are coming up. How do you ensure that one customer is tracked on all the interactions across the different platforms, and all these platforms speak to each other? So if I look at it, the whole hybrid rep transformation, to be honest, for me, it's a very, very daunting transformation. And personally, I enjoy working in transformations and looking forward to a lot of inputs and thoughts from this group of similar set of people working on same challenge. But this is a transformation of multiple dimensions. Said that, personally, in my opinion, I feel there are two important pieces of transformation that is very, very core to pharma and pharma in India. Rest of the places of transformation, I think there are proven models in other industries or proven models even within pharma outside India. So we don't have to really reinvent it. We can just borrow these, learn from these other industries or even pharma outside India and just copy paste it, right? I mean, that's the easiest thing we do in software. And I also spent a few years in software. So copy paste is so popular there. But what are those two important pieces which are, I feel, very, very particular to India pharma? If you look at, this is a very good visualization shared by one of the IQVIA presentations. The fundamental, I would say, the pillars and the columns or the fundamental, block for this whole hybrid transformation is understanding the customer in a 360 view. Do we know what is the digital preferences? Do we know what is the practice evolution of the customer? What are the scientific and academic interests of this particular doctor? Who are the influencers? All this multi-gammeted, dimension of a particular customer is not something that, is new. This is something that the smart rep always knows about his customer. He knows how to engage the customer, what message to communicate, what time to communicate. But the question is, how do you translate this knowledge that exists in the mind of the smart rep into a database? Because that's very fundamental to making sure that once you get that full customer view in a structured, readable, way where you can run analytics, then the whole piece of prioritization or even personalized messaging, like Anil spoke about microsegments n equal to 1, all of this becomes a reality only if this data comes into place. So the question is, how do we do it, right? If you look at global markets, there are standard third-party sources, one key, many other sources of at least the master data which you can leverage on. There are service providers who give you a visibility on access restrictions of customers. However, if you look at India, the traditional way of capturing the information is typically a rep-fed information. We run these massive rep surveys, ask tons of questions to the rep. We follow up through multiple sorts of iterations. There is a question on bias, rep bias. There is a question on data quality. There is even a question of data completion. Many of the teams also, juggle around a lot of unionized reps who may not agree for this whole, the transformation. So how do you do this? Fundamentally, I believe we have to move away from this rep survey-based approach to a multifaceted approach. Like, for example, if I am going to apply for a car loan in a bank, what they would do is they would, in the initial profiling, they might ask me just a simple couple of questions. They might ask me, do you own a house or do you rent a house? Where do you stay? Probably, what was your previous car? These sort of subtle ways of capturing information feeds into your customer view, and then that's where the profile starts building up. Can we relate that to pharma? If I am doing an ex-clinic activity, a digital activity, can I do a simple poll and capture a couple of profile views of the customer? If I'm doing a webinar, can I replicate the same? In the CLM call, can I put one of the pages around a quick capture about the customer profile? So the question is, we need to figure out alternative ways of capturing this information. If you look at consumer industry, they have this ID tracking, which is very well sophisticated. There are a lot of points of views, whether it's McKinsey, whether it's Ansys Equity, all of these guys are involved in it. Why don't we apply that to our doctors? We have the basic MC contact points of the doctor, whether it's email, mobile number. Can we use these, technology that is available, whether it's the ID tracking, there are experts in it, and then start profiling these customers through alternative ways. So fundamentally, if I have to put one key challenge or one key task that I'm very keen on exploring is build this fundamental customer 360 view in a structured way. If that happens, whether the integrated customer journey, which we can jolly well copy from consumer industry or even, pharma from advanced markets. If you look at, artificial intelligence based recommendations for the next best contact, next best messages for the customer, I don't think these are something which we really need to worry about because tech is a commodity. You look at any of the advanced CRM, CLM platforms, they already have built these technologies. They have already deployed these technologies in developed markets, even in India. I'm sure Sudhir might talk about it, but there are a lot of learnings around it. So whether it's engagement plan, whether it's data analytics, my sense is it's complex. Yes, marketeers would have to learn, sales teams would have to upskill, but those are, I would say, simple copy paste from, the nearby industries or maybe, the markets. The second place where I would probably say, an area where we all have to probably think through and develop this whole hybrid rep concept is around we are going to build this while we are going to implement it. This is a complex journey, and we are also starting, like Sridhar said, it is going to stay with us at least for next 18 to 24 months. So the question is, we don't have luxury of time. While at the same time, getting this perfect is also going to take us quite a bit of time. So if that is the scenario, I think we need to really break this into smaller pieces. The concept of agile software building or, the whole sort of, you sort of reinvent and correct this whole, product innovation piece, right? I mean, these are new concepts which are available, but we need to sort of deploy that for this hybrid rep. As basic as probably start putting in some KPIs for the reps that you need to start incentivizing, whether it could be as basic as remote calls that we want to drive or something else around data capture. In many pharma companies, even data capture has not been done pre-COVID. The next piece is, can we celebrate and acknowledge and appreciate the early adopters and early success stories? And obviously, the capability building piece is going to hand in glove. So the second key piece of this whole hybrid transformation for me is how do you break the complex transformation into smaller blocks, set smaller KPIs, and incrementally start innovating while in parallel we perfect the whole model. So this is where probably my dilemma around the whole hybrid rep is. Happy to know your thoughts, maybe questions as well. Sundar, I would hand it over to you if there are any questions.
Thank you very much. Yeah, there are questions. I'm going to ask you to answer some of those on chat, but if I can just surface one, have you done any work or any inputs that you have in terms of, what is the best time to reach customers? We know that all of us who engage in social platforms, you look at Hootsuite, there are lots of platforms which actually tell you what's the best time to put a blog out, right? And they're actually generating all this data based on what's the best day. They even tell you this is the time that you should be putting your blog out if you want to get maximum number of eyeballs. Have you done something like that on the customer side, Prasad, in terms of best day of the week, best hour of the day, things like that? Any thoughts on that?
I think I would say we seriously don't have the scale of data that we are looking at to really pinpoint this. But if I have to look at it, to some extent it changes by specialty and the practice location of the customer. And if I look at, some of the basic data cuts that we have looked at, it changes from hospital dedicated doctors versus a trade doctor to some extent. Hospital doctors, typically we have seen, at least better receptivity around 2 to 4 p.m. to a great extent. And typically on, the Saturdays of the week or maybe, Thursdays, these are 2 days we have seen, typically there is a bit of better access rate. But like I said, we at Sanofi are sort of going through this journey and, building the platforms, I would say in the beginning of the year. So the base of the data is less. But when you look at trade, to a great extent, we are seeing probably, early mornings, probably before the customer starts. That's where the customer open rates are sort of higher. But yeah, I'm happy to hear those who have probably used this analytics for a bit more longer period of time.
Hey, thank you very much, Prasad, and I'm really appreciate if you can, handle some of the questions that have come for you via chat. I think that'll be very helpful, and I'll encourage everybody to connect with you and keep the conversation going online. Thanks again, Prasad, for joining. Next up, both Rachna and Prasad spoke about all the capability considerations, and I couldn't think of, a better friend in the industry than Pankaj Gursahani, Sales Training Director in AstraZeneca. We've known each other for a very long period of time, and he's been a sounding board for me on everything capability. And they've done some very interesting work on scaling Viva Engage, but also outside of that in the way they enable and train their reps. So Pankaj, thank you again for making the time. Over to you, Pankaj.
Thanks, Sundar. I hope I'm reasonably audible.
Yes, you are.
Yeah, thanks. Okay, I think Rachna and Prasad has already said the context. Though I do represent the capability piece, but probably my presentation may go beyond the scope of capability. So just bear with me. That's the first disclaimer. Disclaimer number two, I may not have all the answers to begin with, but maybe I will leave you with some questions. Third thing, whatever I'm going to present, it is basically my personal thought process at this point of time. Bit provocative, the tone also, so kindly bear with me. The idea is not to offend anybody, but to make sure that we really, question our thought process since the time we joined pharmaceutical industry and today what it takes to be different. So keeping that in mind, please view this presentation of mine, which is only 5 slides, as a good case study and then see if we can draw some learning for each other. And I'm also looking for some good answers from you. Not that I intend to share learning, but I'm so selfish to seek some opinions, some suggestions as well. So with this, let me move on to the next piece. Now, this is a busy slide, and this is actually speaking and not a training slide. It's a slide which is basically a amalgamation of the entire cross-functional team, SFE, marketing, medical, and of course the training piece as well. And let me talk about what happened on 17th of March when we had a lockdown announced within the organization, and suddenly we reacted so fast and reacted in a very right spirit, in the sense that speed was a key for us. And we started realizing what we need to do if people have to start operating from home. And we did not have a clear answer, nor the curriculums also with us, but suddenly somebody gave us a one thought, okay, look, why don't we try this thing called Viva Engage, which we heard the term, but we never tried it, right? Okay, fair enough. And you know that when you work in the multinational, you really have to work hard to get all the exceptions, approval. The processes are reasonably complex. So nothing happens more than, in less than 3 to 4 months time. But our deployment of Viva Engage was a great example of collaboration, working together as a team. We deployed 1,000 licenses on 21st of March. On 23rd of March, we had a training, and 27th of March, we really had the first Viva call reported into the system. So the first learning, what I'm trying to bring in on the table is the urgency is the key in these situations also. And sometimes we really have to build a lot of exceptions also in our thought process to drive the change and drive the execution. Yeah. So usual, the processes may not work. That's the first learning which we draw. And then we thought, wow, this seems to be pretty cool stuff. But we realized a lot of doctors were not very keen for Viva Engage. They said, no, I will not give the consent no matter what you do. Come to me through the phone call. That's the second best approach. Now, when we brought the phone call concept as well in the month of April, so the realization was that we were never being trained on the phone etiquettes and all that. Our model of curriculum was very simple: train people on opening, closing, handling objection. But then we have to build a new curriculum, curating the new content also to train people on the phone etiquettes, the email etiquettes, more importantly, because then people are asked to send the mails also to the doctors, which have been given a consent. So if you can see a lot of new content which you brought it on the table with the speed of delivery. And trust me, this is not the only mind of the L&D, but it was a collective effort by the marketing, training, sales leadership also. They really played a great role. Okay. As we move along in the month of June as well, then we realize that my reps are becoming much more smarter, much more agile. They're bringing 2, 3 doctors together in one single call. A, convenience; B, conversation. And then we thought, if that's the way, then I think they need to have a different level of skill. The simple way of selling the product may not work. So they need to act as a seller. They may have to act like a presenter. And who knows, they may like to be act as a facilitator. So the idea was to build the facilitation skill, which is a high-end skill for any trainer, for any marketeer, for any the business leader. And this is something which we thought will rep able to do that. So we built a newer content also around the virtual group call sellings as well. Similarly, if you really want to support our rep, you really have to have a great coach along with you. So build a concept of virtual coach. So this is just a thought. I thought we'll bring it to on table, and there are basic numbers are there for the benefit of all, which I'm sure all the company people have done the similar job. The new courses we deployed, 78 hours of learning, so many audits, a huge amount of assessments which we conducted. But what we did also, we started participating also in the Viva Engage call. Why? Because as a trainer, as a marketeer, we also thought we need to see how the call actually happens in the real time. What my rep does, in that time of 10 minutes, 5 minutes, 6 minutes, looking very encouraging, and he or she is giving a great kind of a struggle or the strengths also. So this is something a great feat for us, and this is probably was responsible for building all over our content, over the next 2 to 3 months. Now, if I talk about the quick impact analysis also, I mean, it comes with both challenges and, some opportunities. So let me start with the opportunities first. You can see the spikes are there in everywhere, whether you talk about the emails, you talk about the phone calls, or importantly, you talk about the Viva Engage call. Rachna did mention 22 minutes is an average call time spent on Viva Engage call. Strangely, we also have more than 21 minutes, so that's a standard which I think Viva Engage calls have given us. And by the way, I'm not talking about few hundreds of calls. I'm talking about thousands and tons of calls where we had an average call reporting of 21 minutes, whether it's a primary care business of ours or for that matter oncology super specialty. Guys, even if you take out 2 3 minutes, hello hi with the doctor, talking about some basic courtesy around COVID conditions, how are you, sir, and all, still people were investing 15 to 16 minutes on actual science. So for me, that was the biggest, sign of relief. Because as a trainer, I never realized that my reps are going to spend 15 minutes time because usually our strike rate before the COVID era was 2.3 to 2.8 minutes on an average across the table, Now, 2.8 minutes going up to 22 minutes is a massive boost. And we started believing that, look, if this is the way we want to sell the science, the new launches and all that, Viva Engage is going to be one platform. Hey, by the way, I'm not here to promote Viva Engage. It's just a name. I mean, you can think of Microsoft Team or Zoom. I mean, I'm talking about virtual platform because we use Viva Engage. So I'm compelled to use this name. I'm sure Sudhir will do the needful for his bit on Viva Engage. But this is what I think we have seen. But what you see interestingly also that there is a decline. I mean, we had a good ride till the month of May, but in the month of June, we started seeing decline in everything. The phone call become stagnant. The emails also are dropping down. By the way, email is strike rate of opening the mail is just 18%, which we clocked, which is hardly any. Which means if I'm sending 100 mails, 18% of mail have opened by the doctors. 18 doctors are opening the mail, and we don't know to what extent they're reading the entire content. So that's a different story. So if you really ask me, is the emailing is a very good way of communicating to the doctor? Something is better than nothing, but otherwise not a very effective. Phone calls, God, I think it's a mystery what we can expect to speak on the phone for 30 seconds, 10 seconds, or 1 minute also. But the challenge came to us: how do you train the rep to become much more crisper, much more precise while communicating doctors to the phone call? And personally, I mean, I'm a big believer of science through show and tell. So I think all such virtual platform is something which we eye on. But when we saw the decline, we realized the problem is not with the rep. Before that, we used to believe the rep need to be more capable, more skilled, but I realized they were actually very skilled. They're actually very knowledgeable. It is that they were not getting enough opportunities within the environment to speak science. Imagine when I used to go to Apollo Hospital as a rep, 100 doctors, 100 reps are standing outside one doctor clinic. What science I will talk for 30 seconds, 40 seconds? No way. I will just mention the brand name. I may not open the iPad also. And I end up by, communicating few things. Hello, hi, doctor, thank you, giving some samples and walk away. Now, is that a call which we as a trainer try to envisage when people come for a training program? The answer is definitely no. But today, when I see this digital platform, I really see a window of opportunity for all of us. But what it requires also, the content need to be also replenished as fast as possible. Like Prasad was talking about, Rachna was saying that marketeers build the content once or twice in the year, and that stays on with the rep for the rest of the year. But if you're looking for a digital platform, thinking about 15 to 20 minutes of call, you really have to be well skilled as a marketeer, as a medical person, to make sure that the content keep replenishing, fortnight after fortnight. In case you want to make 2 calls per doctor in a month, It all depends on what frequency on which you wanted to have. Because we started getting a complaint from the doctor, ki, look, yeah, this is the same content which you showed me last time. Then why are you taking so much of time to speak the same content? I know your product. Thank you very much. So that was the second learning which we draw out of it, that content need to be replenished as much as possible. So the challenge for us is this a rep challenge alone? Definitely not. So it's a collective challenge which we thought we need to work it out together. So my next slide is actually is the area which I thought I'll bring it on the table. Not that I want to impose my thought, but I want to seek your suggestions as well. What are we talking about? Now, look at it. This is my so-called digital hybrid rep, which we are talking about. The one who is going to go once the lockdown gets over. He's not going to make only physical calls. He is going to make some face-to-face calls. He's going to make some phone calls. He's going to make some Viva Engage calls. He may send 7 or 8 the emails as well. This is the way he's going to build a coverage, if you really ask me. So now it says that what do we expect from the rep? So I think my first recommendation is to all of us, including me, I think we may have to rewrite his JD, the job description. And please ask yourself, when was the last time you have seen the job description of your rep? If you've seen it, great. When was the last time it has been upgraded? And it is not a responsibility of HR alone, by the way. So I'm not pinning the gun on the HR colleagues. No, it's a collective responsibility. So I would say do a one good job analysis, put together all the stakeholders, because this is the one person who need to be upskilled to the next level. And once you've got a good JD, then of course your entire hiring strategy also go for a change in terms of what new skill sets you would like to have, how digital savvy the person need to be vis-a-vis the conventional way of selling. So the entire your hiring strategy, it may go for a change completely. Who knows? You may not like to go for no offense, experienced people. You may like to go for a fresher all the time. So or vice versa. So this is something which has got a huge impact on your hiring strategy. If you bring somebody different, skill set guy, then he need to be trained differently also. And that's the reason what we are recommending here, the blended learning curriculum with very clear pit stop, 6 months, 1 year, 2 year down the line. My experience with the pharma colleagues of mine, we have got so much of pressure of attrition and all that we end up doing only in the induction programs, the basic induction program. And after that, we don't get enough opportunities unless and until there are some strategy meetings and all happen. So that's very reactive. So intent is here to build more of a proactive approach to make sure that you keep providing the newer skill sets. Sorry to say this word, I would say please change the S&T model. This is a very good old thing which we used to see way back in late 80s and early 90s, the concept of V1, V2, V3, V4, which to me in 2020 post-COVID era is more of a garbage. You think doctor is going to give me a time 4 times in a month after the COVID time or during the COVID time? No way. Which means we really have to think through a different S&T model altogether, which I'm sure Prasad and Rachna have really given a good hint on that. But I'm saying that you got to go deep into that to look at what kind of a coverage we are looking at from our reps. My favorite point, storytelling content. Now, this is a truly a marketing challenge, may not be a sales challenge alone, because salesperson, if he's required to be skilled well, he needs to be given a real content, which should be completely story-based. It cannot happen that you have the old visual aid content, make a PDF version, upload into a system, and he's going to sell the 4 salient feature and 2, 3 benefits and walk away. It will work still very well in case you have got face to face, in case you have got 1 or 2 phone call. But in case you really have a real science to sell, the real concept to sell, a real specialty like respiratory or for that matter oncology, you really have to have a great story around patient. It has to be a very conversational way of dealing with a doctor. Who knows, tomorrow you may say, okay, I think I will make only 1 call in a month, but that call has to be a great call, the call which should last for 20-25 minutes, or maybe a great conversation leading to some good conversion, leading to challenge the status quo. So that's a thought process which I think all of us, we have to work around that. So storytelling is something very important. Second last piece I would rather recommend, maybe you have to think and ask yourself, it's time probably we really have to think a different support system to support the hybrid rep. And personally, what I have seen in the last few months, peer-to-peer learning is far better than the line manager support. Because today I talk about, we don't have a joint working concept physically face to face, at least in AstraZeneca. We do have joint field working, but through virtual connect. Okay, it has its own limitation, it has its own positives also. But having said that, the better approach will be if you build a platform to make sure the people learn from each other. And I think in today's concept, peer-to-peer learning is far better than anything else. Last but not the least, ask yourself, and this is all the question to the HR colleagues, the business leaders, what structure we need to have as we move along 6 months, 1 year down the line. Sridhar gave a view of 24 months also, but my visibility is just beyond 1 year, not even that. Do we have the same structure of zonal manager, RBM, ABM, or do we really have to think to some different structure altogether? Do you really want to have a centralized team sitting in HO, or do you really want to have a matrix organization where the cross-functional team state-wise takes over the show and they run the show together collectively, right? So maybe you got to ask yourself, do we need to have so many levels also? Maybe you do want to remove one level, ask yourself. Because sometimes these support functions may not be a real support. Sometimes they could be a leakage point also, right? So this is all the thought which I thought it is important that we really have to think through. And when you go back, challenge yourself, challenge your other stakeholders, at least bring it to conversation. It may not conclude to anything, but at least a thought has come to you and through you to many others. So that's one piece. And I always say that before we basically correct others, you really have to keep your own house in order as well. I think the slide is not moving for me. Give me a second. Yeah. So in conclusion, this is something the action needed to build the great deal of organization for all of us, and L&D has got a real role to play. I would encourage four things actually: the digital savvy leadership which we need to build on, and when I say leadership, it does not mean the top leadership. I'm talking about each and everybody, including me, you. Everybody today enjoys a leadership position in our organization in some capacity. So each one have to be a very, very digital savvy. Point number two, all our brand strategy need to have a digital embedment. I even heard from one of the FMC organizations, they are building a new vertical called digital vertical. It's a separate SBU altogether whose job is to think, eat, breathe digital. So that's a one thought which maybe we can also apply. Very clear patient ecosystem to be scaled out, right from prevention to treatment. And last but not the least, if I have to say, I think it's a time for us to pick up the newer skill set to uplift the capabilities. Some of the things which I am toying the thoughts with my team also and with my other stakeholders and my other industry colleagues. Storytelling technique is something which is a real buzz, and I really thought it's something which we all have to learn. Personally, I don't have that wisdom to create the content as well at this point of time, so I'm struggling big time. Facilitation skills, as I said already, is in need of the hour. In case your rep is going for digital platform, Viva Engage calls, is something which is very critical. And besides, Rachna already mentioned about AI data analytics. So this is a broad scheme of thing which need to be put on the table. At least bring it to the management. At least it should be a part of our discussion point to see what can be accepted by all of us. And last but not the least, from the L&D perspective, we have been driving these four focus area, which I'm sure all of you also have. In case you don't have, I think it's a time to have it, because COVID also gives you a great deal of opportunities. So सब कुछ बुरा भी नहीं है, but I think it also gives you the new learning and new opportunities, and it should not happen that down the line 1 year you repent, Arey, I could have tried this, I should have done that. So maybe it's a great time. People are open for new ideas. People are open for change. Any idea which comes on the table, people nowadays accept it willingly, relatively speaking. So I would encourage think through and build some immersive platform with a richer content with the help of medical and marketing. I love those guys because they are the one who drive the source of fuel to all of us. Whatever the content you build, it has to be micro bite-sized learning. Retention time and span is very less in today's world. Even sitting at home, can't imagine if you read the content for 3 or 4 hours. It's not possible. So it has to be really, really bite-sized. And maybe it's the time looking at your KPIs and all. Your LMS should give you a system to recommend very personal, learning tools, AI-based. If I'm having a knowledge gap in certain area, the tool should tell me, Pankaj, you should have this knowledge module to go through and learn for yourself. And not every time trainers and the coaches are required to do that. The system should also be able to support that. And today I'm glad to say that we have systems like that in our industry also. And last but not the least, this is what I thought I'll share with you all. I don't think so. I've taken enough time within 10 minutes. So thank you very much for your patient listening. In case you have any question, feel free to pose it to me.
Thanks. Thank you, Pankaj. There are questions that I'm going to surface for you right at the end because the next few presentations do sort of build on what you've said. But I'd encourage you to answer some of the questions on chat as well. But really appreciate your time, Pankaj. So next up is Sudhir. We thought it'll be great to get a partner perspective. Sudhir has a vantage point. He's talking to GSK, many other clients who are sort of on this journey, different points within our journey in terms of our maturity and how we are taking the approach to market. So I thought he's got a very objective view from the outside to say, hey, who's doing what? It'll be great to hear from Sudhir on what are he seeing as current practices, what's the direction, what are the pain points clients are sharing with him. Sudhir, over to you. Thank you again for joining.
Thank you, Sundar. Appreciate.
And appreciate. I know you're in Singapore. It's very late for you. Appreciate you, being flexible. Thank you, Sudhir. Over to you.
No worries. This is a passionate topic for me as well. So thanks for the opportunity to present to this group. The best part is I can see so many friends and colleagues here. So hello to all of you, and hope you all are staying safe and well. For those of you who I don't know, my name is Sudhir, and I'm responsible for Viva's commercial business in Asia Pacific, based out of Singapore. And I'm really stoked with what I've heard already, and that kind of puts me in the spot with Rachna, Prasad, and Pankaj setting the bar so high. And what happens when we get into these meetings, we believe our content is unique, but when you exchange ideas with colleagues, that's when we realize that there isn't much difference. Ideas to a large extent look very similar. However, this is what I'm going to focus on today. One is obviously share some data on digital execution, the trends and some metrics specific to India. We heard some ideas already from Rachna as well as from Pankaj. Maybe I can give a little more aggregated view. And secondly, some views around the emerging sort of commercial engagement model on the back of COVID. And this is mostly some early signposts or the responses as the industry thinks of the future, right? So please take these inputs more as we see at this point in time. Maybe use it as a marker, if you will. Right? With that, let me just give you some specific insights, right? So this is Viva looking at India market, and this is very specific to our customers, right? So we heard two technologies being talked about earlier as well. One is approved email, which is a rep having the capacity to send emails to the HCP, and second is engaged meeting, which kind of took off on the back of the lockdown. Right? So now even before the COVID, approved email as a tool was used, and it's one of the best used tools in India. I can talk from an Asia Pacific perspective, but obviously it has also taken off significantly in the last 90 odd days, right? And the average open rate is 18%. I know click-through rates and those kind of metrics are the next sort of evolution which companies need to think about. But this is a basic metric there which I want to leave you with. And the second one is engaged meetings. You heard from both Rachna as well as Pankaj, so nothing much to amplify there. But that kind of came in as a step-up opportunity during the lockdown. So, but the biggest sort of idea which I want to leave with you is two things, right? One is there was always two significant barriers which came in executing a hybrid engagement, right? And both of them came crashing down on the back of this situation called COVID, right? One, there was always this concern that HCPs are not digitally savvy, right? So that was always an excuse or rather a sort of viewpoint within the industry. Second is our reps do not have the capacity. And we have heard from the previous speakers that both of them are completely off the table at this point in time. Getting so much of opportunity to engage with HCPs is real, and the ability to engage in a digital fashion by the reps is also real. So I believe that in the last 120 days or so, this is a big learning, right? Both the barriers which we had for years are no more a barrier. So that please hold that as an important thought. Now, what I want to share with you is a little more detail. This is more an execution piece, and I think it kind of sums up both Rachna's views as well as Pankaj's feedback. Right? As you can see, on the left-hand side is more in terms of approved emails, which is a non-personal way of engaging with HCP, and then engage meeting, which is a remote way of engaging with the HCP. Right? And as you can see, approved email has really taken off, because of the proprietary nature of data. Look at the trend lines more than, the specific numbers, right? And the reason is it's confidential, right? So, we want to respect that. Now, the big picture there is it's January through June in terms of data on both the pictures you have. The left is approved emails, right is engaged meeting. Now, if you can see, as the COVID lockdown began in March, all the way till June, you will see that there is a substantial increase, both in terms of the mail sent as well as the engaged meeting happen. Right? Now, it also calls out in terms of various companies joining at different times through this journey. I know that there's still not many companies showing up in this data because they're still in the process of getting ready to get into this digital mode, right? But the simple message there is it's actually trending upwards, right? So now the larger question, and the question which everybody has in mind, is what sort of future do we look at, right? So basically, if you look at what people talk about is two things, right? A is, there is a sense that, it's going to be normal. We'll go back to the same face-to-face. That could be one scenario. Next is there's going to be an absolutely new normal. And third is there could be a rise in the digital and newer forms of engagement. And for that, I just picked up a data from Australia as a market, which got out of the lockdown, and what reading it looks like. Now, it's not that India would follow an Australia trend, but just so that you're aware, after the lockdown was lifted in Australia, what we've seen is the engaged meeting actually came down in Australia. But what you have to note is, look at the amount of engaged meetings which is happening at around the March period, or look at the trend which was there in May. You will realize that even after the lockdown, there is 50% of calls still happening on Engage. So the summary there is, for me, it doesn't look like there is going to be going back to normal. There is going to be a new normal. Right? So there is going to be a correction which will happen, and we think that we should brace ourselves for new normal. At least that's what the data says at this point in time. Yeah. And so that's more from a data perspective, just to give you a sense from hard data what it looks like as we are passing through this period of crisis. But again, like most of you pointed out very early, COVID seems to be a long-drawn process. It's going to be periods of lockdown, periods of openness, and then periods of lockdown, because the community is going to keep getting the infection, and it's going to keep moving forward, right? So, everybody's estimate is that between 12 to 18 months, this is going to be the market situation. So we believe that yes, it's going to be another 10 to 12 months when things get normal. But then there's and if that's so, what's going to be the response from the industry? And the next slide is my last slide, and this is probably what I want to leave you as a thought as we see companies execute during this period. Right? So if you look at markets in Asia Pacific, starting whether it's February in some of the markets in this part of the world or March in India, the first response was always crisis, right? You looked at every which way you could engage with HCP. So it started with calls, it started with WhatsApp messages, and whatever is the tool, whether it is Line, Kakao Talk, and so on and so forth. Right? And what happened what companies realized in the first sort of 30 to 40 days is, customers have stopped engaging with this bombardment of new hello doctor, how are you doing? Can we catch up? And so on. So people took a step back, and in fact, in some markets, there was a directive that, you can't harass HCPs through this bombardment through social messaging and so on. So I think companies step back and looked at, okay, now this seems to be a long drawn thing. We need to think about strategy. So one thing which is very clear is the digital horse has left the stable, right? Now you need to ride it. The question is, how do you want to ride it? And we are seeing some early responses, and this is not like a whole sort of an idea, but a few thoughts which we have, we've gathered from many sort of companies. One company has decided that they're going to have a day in a week where it's going to be focused on digital calls, and they have their own methodology of what kind of HCPs they want to call. But there is already a thinking on those lines that they would think that digital calls has value, as you have seen the stats from previous presenters as well. It gives you time, right? It gives you opportunity to be creative. It gives you opportunity to get more people from a company to engage potentially with more people on the market side, right? So the traditional mindset of our selling is a rep and a call, but here people are looking at creative digital call days where it's a team call with a team of doctors. So new ideas are emerging, which is interesting. One company told us that they're going to change the training as a function from a more physical, quarterly or half-yearly oriented approach to a more digital oriented approach, right? The reason for that is, the rep in the past was trained for relationship selling and scientific selling, but now you need to have digital capabilities as well with the rep, right? So if that's reality, then the question is, how do we ensure we train our reps to enable digital capacity? So, decided that they're going to do it more often. They're going to do, fortnightly short bit-sized training programs, which, I saw interestingly, Pankaj put up in his slide as well. So that's from a digital. I think, like it or not, digital as a concept is out there and it's going to be real. I think the blended model is here to stay. Second, the third aspect there is around skills audit. I think earlier speakers covered it, but one thing which I want to emphasize here is, hybrid rep as a concept is just tip of the sphere. It's where the moment of truth is being executed through your rep and HCP. But a lot of that sphere is the back end, which is the company, the capabilities, the structure, the model, and so on. So I think Pankaj articulated it well. I guess it's really a time to look at what kind of skills we require within a company if the future looks like a combination of physical and digital model, right? So absolutely, and some companies are in the process. I think to a large extent, pharma companies approached in the past has been rep and supporting the rep to engage with HCP, and to a large extent, HCP's response was tied to what the rep did. I guess what digital does is it gives us more opportunity to understand HCP better. I think earlier speakers spoke about, how do you segment, how do you understand 360-degree view, and so on and so forth. And digital gives you great opportunity to capture what works, what doesn't work. And that's where I guess, the marketing as a function will get elevated significantly in this new model. So marketing gets to do the real job of marketing, which is, engaging with HCPs and delivering true demand. And this is where I want to talk about a concept called 3C cycle, which is nothing but earlier everything was rep, and what the rep can deliver was the limitation at which you delivered the content. Right? But with digital as an option, there is an opportunity to be creative. You could think about channel and what kind of content will work for that channel and how that's being consumed. And that cycle of channel content and consumption gives you a way by which you amplify the efforts of how you engage with HCP. You're talking about close to one-to-one engagement. I think this is probably the way by which that's going to happen. You put the content there, you see the consumption pattern, you look back and see how it works. Right? And what that means is, the content is going to be in permanent beta. It's not like you create content a quarter earlier and then a quarter later is when it is consumed. Here you are on the fly, right? So I guess marketing is going to be super agile, and I think that that to me seems to be marketing. When I call it, it's digital marketing and the brand marketing together. So I think this is an exciting time where we will see elevated levels of impact this group will do within the company. And the outcome of that is the next one, which is precision targeting, right? I totally agree. ABC is a model which was built with rep as a constraint. He can only meet so many calls. He can only make so many calls. He can only meet so many doctors. So now constraints off the table, then how do you look about your segmentation, right? I think that, a new model is emerging, and hence, how do you segment? So I think Pankaj also spoke about it, and I tend to think that ABC model is out for complete review. I think that's definitely different. That's going to be different in the future. I definitely think that companies will realize various ways by which you engage digital savvy, and so on and so forth. So anyway, that's one thought there. I think what we have also seen during this COVID crisis is this concept called team calls. I talked about it earlier, but let me just amplify a bit. The opportunity to engage meaningfully and high impact with a few customers, with a rep and the right people from HO probably is going to be a new model. And hence, the whole concept of territory, how you manage your call KPIs and so on and so forth is going to change in the future. So targeting is more going to be backed on how much of customer attention you are getting rather than how many rep calls you may reach in the future. So this is completely alien to the way we are doing so far in this industry. So that's an interesting idea which I heard from some of our customers, and I thought, wow, this is going to take some effort to change because it kind of shakes the whole DNA of our industry. And last but not least is, I think, again, transformation is the term used by Prasad, I guess. Data is going to be the biggest currency on which, the future of engagement is going to be on. So how do you get the data? What kind of platforms you use to get the data? How are you able to integrate multiple sources of engagement and able to get that 360-degree view? What kind of capacities and capabilities do we need to have, both on the technology side as well as our execution, to ensure that we take decisions on the back of data is going to be a significant aspect as we look at the future. I guess, the KPIs are going to be significantly different in the future. I still think that even though some of our customers do use digital tools, the big picture still is, how many calls, what's the average call rate, and so on. Right? So I guess on the back of this whole COVID situation, that definitely is up for change. I think if it's not changing, then there is an issue. Right? So that's on the KPI side. And last but not least is innovate. I guess it's a very, like somebody told, it's a very loosely used term at this point in time. But I guess that's the heart of the whole COVID, right? And this is where I would like to close with two thoughts, right? As we speak at this point in time, there is a biggest experiment happening in the life sciences industry. And what we are doing right now is we are sitting through this experiment and watching the first sort of trailer, if you will. Right? And I'm calling it experiment just because, it is forced upon us. It's not a thoughtful activity, but, that's the exciting part of it, right? It's forced. We are seeing some early responses by some of the customers who are seeing some value, and so this experiment is up for, for real, right? It might turn out to be the real thing in the future. So we are super excited as we see the whole industry participate in a big change. And last but not least is, the industry has mastered the art of go-to-market model, which is, large field forces and the whole selling model built on the back of a rep and rep's ability to execute, right? And that is a big change which we will see on the back of this whole experiment which is underway. So if you were to ask me what are two thoughts which you want to carry back is, hey, there is this experiment happening. What are we learning? What is it working? What is not working? And there are no right or wrong answers because, at times we are doing this experiment without backend capability. At times we are doing it at a speed where not everything is aligned, right? But, keep an eye on what's happening. I think we'll find a lot of nice inputs as we share across in these industry forums, what work, what doesn't work. And so that one. And the second one is definitely, we are talking about a huge change in mindset, and it starts from the top significantly, right? How are the leaders driving the change? how the change is being monitored, how hard are we in terms of making that change happen. And so I guess the important aspect is how much is area managers involved in this whole change process. Because if you are doing this mass scale transformation at the field, one important aspect is, where is the area manager in this whole scheme of things, and what is his capability or her capability in terms of capacity and drive to make this change happen. And with that, thank you so much for the opportunity. And thanks, Sundar. If there are questions, obviously, I know that, there might be some on the chat. I will pick it up. But thank you so much.
Thank you, Sudhir. Great to hear your perspective from the outside. I'm looking through the stats that you put out the slides in terms of what the trends have been in Jan and June, and clearly there seems to be very good early traction, right? I mean, I remember, you're presenting 13 minutes as the average call time on Viva Engage. I think those are all. I mean, that's a good place to be in compared to, let's say, this not even being in the consideration set just a few months back. So thanks a lot for sharing, Sudhir, and we're really running tight here, so I'm gonna now move on to Raja. I mean, everyone's spoken about content being the key piece, and I thought Raja, who's the marketing head at Servier, would have an interesting twist on, what does this mean for the entire marketing leaders as well as the whole content machinery that we have operating at the back end. Raja, we're not doing great on time, so I'm gonna ask you to keep this in an elevator pitch format. You've got 5 minutes, Raja. Thank you very much.
Yeah, please. Sundar, first of all, thank you very much. I'm going to keep it very simple. And I'll take forward 2 points. Anil has spoken about it in a very practical way. No digital lingo. He simply said about the importance of context. And Prasad from Sanofi had said something very interesting. It attracted my attention. We are not content factories. Having said that, probably I had 3 stories to share with you. Let me see how quickly I can take back. The whole situation, as Rachana, Prasad, Pankaj were elucidating before, reminds me of what is the strategy we should adopt in this current situation, which is very complex. So this is the story, 1960s. Honda wanted to enter the US market. So the motorcycle you see in the middle, the big motorcycle, that's what was Honda's strategy. They wanted to compete with Harley. Of course, they were making their motorbikes at a very economical price, and they thought that this is how they would capture their market. But Honda didn't do well. Some of the Honda employees on their weekends were using the bike you see on the right-hand side, which is the Honda dirt bike. And some other people got curious and said, guys, what is this? And they started importing these mobiles from Japan. So that's how the Honda strategy has evolved in US. It was not an intended strategy. It was an emergent strategy. Basically what it meant was, you can go with your preconceived ideas, we can do our SWOT analysis, key facts, but what happens is, you learn from what the market is trying to teach you. So for me, the current situation is what we should do, very simply known as emergent strategy. That's one. The second thing, I like this example very much. Firstly, as I said, there are no digital solutions. This is a case study about Tesco in South Korea in 2011 when they wanted to enter the market. Before them, already Walmart and Carrefour are sailed, and they were competing with a local giant called E-Mart. So rather than compete with them on discounting, rather than compete with them on a place, because in retail, place is the king, what they decided was they came up with an innovative strategy. South Korea, as some of you must be knowing, is one of the places where executives work the longest hours. So they went and constructed these display boards in metro stations and bus stations. So the executives, all they had to do was download a HomePlus app and then scan it. And of course, they put through the app. And South Korea has a broadband connectivity. And then, of course, they can choose the time in which the stocks were delivered at their home. So what did Tesco do? Tesco did not compete. They understood the customer's journey. They took a pain point and they addressed it. Of course, digital was used to solve this problem. And that's the second thing what I want to say. One was the emergent strategy. Second thing, of course, was solving the customer pain point. The last example I have, and this is one of my favorite, our homegrown Unilever. Way back in 2015, I read this article in Economic Times. Unilever wanted to reach out to 200 million customers in the eastern part of India, and they were living in a network dark zone, so TV was not possible. So what they did, they came out with an innovative solution. They gave it all free. They advertised. They said any person can give a missed call to this toll free. In return, he would get a call back, and then he would get a half an hour fee of entertainment, jokes, interspersed with HUL advertisement. Think about it. Pesky telemarketing calls, which you and me are used to now, and look at HUL creating their own channel, and they solved one more customer pain point. So all I'm trying to say here, I have no solutions. Of course, we have seen one platform, one digital solution. We have talked about emails. Fine, fair enough. I do not know that really works. I'm going to be a bit provocative. There are no digital solutions, only business solutions. So the three things what we need to know, one is, of course, it should be an emergent strategy. So we do not know what is going to be right, what is going to be the normal, new normal, no guesses. It's all crystal gazing. The second thing, understand the customer journey, understand the pain point, and of course, the third thing, give them something which is of meaningful value. Pankaj spoke about it. Initially, you go up to 22 hours, 22 minutes. After that, we find a challenge. Because why? Pharma marketing, pharma sales, pharma business, we are not content manufacturers. Our process, if you talk about the medical approvals, is not very easy. So, all I'm going to do is to leave you with one question. What is the value you are offering? And that for me is the key. Why a HCP would want to listen to your rep? Should you do a virtual call? Should you do a WhatsApp call? Should I do an email? All that depends on this single question, and there are no answers. And Anil has said it, and I liked it, and it's a part of the article which I have expressed, and it's published in Medicine Man. Thanks to Anup so on today. Anil said each of us must walk the path on our own, solve the problem on our own, because the therapy areas are different, the HCP profiles are different, and regions are different. So Sundar, I end there. Thank you very much for the time and the efforts you have put in to make it conclude this way. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Raja. Great perspectives there. We're at the end of the time. We've only contracted 90 minutes. Like we said before, this is a conversation, and this particular event per se is only a trigger point. So I'm really hoping that you resonated with many of the things our speakers said. There are lots of questions on chat. The speakers have been very gracious in answering those on chat as well. Keep the conversation going. We have recorded this event, so we will make that available. And we're also curating a short blog where we will capture all the key insights that have been shared by various speakers. Again, I want to extend my thanks to all the companies that have made the time to be here. I know there are many other companies as well that have joined. Unfortunately, if you don't see your logo on the slide, my apologies. But thank you, everybody. And again, please join me, everyone, in thanking the speakers for their time. I mean, everyone's busy, so this is over and about their day job. Really appreciate your willingness to share so openly, and I'm pretty certain that many colleagues from the industry will keep the conversation and connections going with you. With that, let me now invite Anil Iyer, our Chief Commercial Officer, for closing this forum. Anil, over to you. Thank you.
Thanks, Sundar. At the outset, thank you, everybody, the speakers especially. I think great insights out there. But I have one takeaway from this. I know from tomorrow morning, I got to start changing my JD. Whilst it's very easy, it's not about hybrid reps. It's about, and I think it's very, all of you have spoken it in a different manner. But it's about how each one of us will contribute to improving and increasing the engagement that the company has with our customers, that is HCPs. The rep could be one channel, there could be multiple other channels. What it does to the capabilities of folks at the front line in commercial of marketing and comics is definitely I think a session away. I mean, that's another 30 minutes, 90 minutes of conversation. But there were some questions raised around the structure of the organization itself, which is also important because going ahead, if you will see, the roles become so different and diffused. The role of the ABM will be very, very different. Today, as somebody said, there are 4 or 5 levels in every organization. My sense is it will get extremely flat. But having said all this, it's all very exciting to start on a new journey and get folks to start doing new things. One of the things we always forget is when you start doing something, you got to stop doing something. And I always am a strong believer this, and I have this philosophy which my wife has taught me in life. If you buy something new, you got to throw something old away. And I think it applies here also. You have to stop doing things. You cannot expect the rep to say do 10 calls and do 4 Viva Engage and send 6 emails, get them onto webinars. I mean, it doesn't work like that. So maybe some of you will have to start thinking, what's the role? How do we engage with the customers, which is far more fundamental than just is it a hybrid rep out there? So thank you very much for this thought-provoking conversations, and my gratitude to all the speakers. Thank you very much from GSK as well as everybody else who has been on the call. Sundar, back to you.
Thank you very much, Anil. I'm now going to ask all of the participants, join me again in saying one final time, thank you to all the fantastic speakers. The speakers are what make the sessions interesting and get the conversation started. So thank you again. Really, really appreciate your willingness to share and, you being able to make them. And also, thank you to all the participating companies that are willing to come. I'm sure this is the start of many ongoing conversations that we as colleagues within the industry can have. Please look out for the blog as well as the video on LinkedIn. And if you want to share it with other colleagues, please feel free to do that. Thank you, everybody. Please stay safe. Have a great rest of the week ahead and have a great evening. Thank you again for joining. That brings us to the close of the session. Thank you, everybody. Have a good evening.
Thanks,
Bye now.
Thank you very much. Stay safe. Stay at home. Bye.
Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Everyone.